My name's Eddie Winters. You're tuned in to the Rock and Roll Coup d'etat. We've got a very special guest joining us. I'm excited. I'm actually very excited. He's played with virtually everybody in the rock and roll entertainment business. He's been around for years, and he's been playing with basically, I mean, everyone. One of the finest keyboard songwriters, musicians out there. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do it. We're gonna do it live. It is Brian Chatton. Brian, welcome to the program.
Oh, that was me, was it?
Yeah. Yes. We got some applause for you. Congratulations. He's got a new book. Brian, you're working on a new book, and we wanted to talk to you about it and talk a little bit about your career. Just exciting. Can you tell us what the name of your book is, and you've been working on it for a while. Tell us about it and about the project that's coming out.
Okay, Eddie, first of all, when you first got on to me about a minute or so ago, you said you have a voice for radio.
Yeah,
I have a face for radio.
Oh, there it is. Baby, you got a face for film. You're fantastic. What are you talking about?
Yeah, no. Well, it's called Mr. Excitement Rolling with Rock Royalty. So it's basically Mr. Excitement, which is who I am occasionally when I haven't got clothes on.
Right. You are, I mean, and absolutely, filled with excitement. You are you've been playing in groups for years, and you've played alongside some of the biggest names ever. And I assume in this book it's going to tell some stories, of course, but your journey on how you got into music and came over to the States and continue to play. Can you tell us a little bit about the project of putting all of this together and telling these stories?
Well, it actually happened by accident, because about 4 years ago I was putting together a project that would have involved 2 or 3 big screens at the back of a stage. And I was going to do a show with me playing cheese boards, of course, and having a guest for about 15 minutes at the end of about an hour show, an hour and 15 minutes maybe.
Right.
And, I put together all these videos of me with, various people, Phil Collins and so on, when we were teenagers.
Sure.
Phil, incredibly good-looking dude with long hair. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I put all these videos together, and me and Anderson back in the 60s.
Right.
And it promised to be really good, but it was just a tough time then, I think, to try and get anything off the ground. So I went on Kickstarter and didn't do too well there, to be honest. And I kind of said, well, I tried. I was going to do a documentary. I was going to do everything. And then at the end of it all, I thought, well, instead of me backing off and saying I lost, why don't I just get something from this? And so I started to put all the information together that I had for the videos and the show, and started a book. And then a young lady called Amy Simmons, who lives in Philadelphia, she said, I see you had a pretty colorful history. Have you ever thought of writing a book? And I said, yeah, well, actually, I'm just thinking about it now. She says, well, let me help you.
Oh, wow.
And so she's been helping me, and it's been going on now for about 4 years.
Is that right? But are you're on the eve of the release? Is that correct?
Oh,
I mean,
very close.
What
the eve of construction.
Exactly. When do you anticipate the book going live?
Well, I'd love to think Christmas, and it's a toss-up whether it makes it or not. 50-50, I'd say. If it doesn't, it'll be in the early New Year.
New Year's, baby.
It's just that a few people have just come out of the woodwork and said that they publish,
right,
because they've read a little bits of what I've got, and they want to publish it. So I was just going to put it out on Amazon, Eddie. I don't know whether you know the ups and downs about that, but there's a little too many risks involved just putting it out on Amazon.
Right.
I don't know whether or not I'll get all the royalties I deserve.
Right.
So I'm just holding back until I've heard from all these other publishing companies and then I'll make a decision in about 2 weeks.
Right. Oh, well I mean, it's got to be exciting considering, I mean, you've had these stories, I mean, from your life. Not to give away what's going on in the book, but, what are some of the stories you can expect, details of your life that you are sharing or not sharing in the book?
Well, it consists of about 15 chapters altogether. And it starts, from when I was a little lad
right.
in Manchester, and the kind of life that was going on around there, because I was only like 20 miles from Liverpool, 7 miles from Manchester,
Wow.
and of course about 20 miles from Accrington,
right,
where the Warriors came from.
Right, and
So,
the big part of your youth as well is one of the early bands with Jon Anderson.
Yes, it was all about football and music for me.
Wow, that's
And I mean British football, soccer.
We're aware.
yeah, of course, of course.
I was born 7 miles from Manchester United, but because I was born 2 miles from Bolton Wanderers, where we come from, you support the club that's closest to where you were born,
right?
And that's it. There's no ifs and a buts. So Manchester United are possibly the greatest soccer team that's ever been, club team, that is. And I can't support them because I'm 4 miles from Bolton.
Wow.
Yeah, you should have spoke to your parents and said, "What were you doing?"
They should have shifted a couple of miles and I'd have been fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was born in a pretty cool area, I think.
Right.
And music was always, since I was 5, I did classical training, and it was the only thing I ever really got to grips with.
It seems, I mean, to come in, you came in at such a great time, too, in music. I mean, there was such a, rock and roll was still kind of a new thing, and obviously coming in the 60s and playing in these groups that were a little bit more progressive. I mean, it must have been very exciting being a teenager and getting to play on these shows, getting to put out records. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences, as a in your late teens and going off and playing with, obviously Phil and John and of course, a lot of these guys. What was that sensation like doing that?
Well, to begin with, you mentioned, growing up. I mean, it started for me when I was about 12 or 13 when I joined my first band.
Wow.
And the Beatles came out right about then.
Right.
And it was amazing because we never even saw ourselves as being the next Beatles. We just wanted to have fun, and it was a way of getting credibility and recognition from your friends and the girls, especially if you were in a band. So it was really all for a bit of fun. But as we progressed and we were in a band with the Three Jets, me and one of the guys was called Barry Reynolds, who's an excellent guitar player.
Yeah, played with Marianne Faithfull.
Right.
Joe Cocker, and quite a lot of really cool people.
Yeah.
And the more we were together, the more we realized, hey, we're not bad. There just may be an outside chance, a midget's Willie of a chance. that Beatles,
Wow. And it kind of, playing in these kind of bands, it obviously progressed into I mean, you're seeing some of your friends also go off and start these groups, and you're playing in groups and touring and doing, seeing this success. It's got to be a kind of an exciting time, watching you and your friends.
But enough with a lot of my mates, except for probably Anderson, and Ian Wallace, of course, the drummer from the Warriors,
right.
Superb drummer, rest in peace, Wallam D. Jr. He's a great drummer, one of the best in the world, and he departed about 5 years ago.
Right.
However, him and John and myself went down to London after the Warriors for 2 or 3 years. We were in Germany and doing all the stuff that you've heard about, all the entertainment, the drugs entertainment.
Right, sure.
And, and we went through that. And like the Beatles did, which always made me laugh when people said, the Beatles were an overnight success.
Yeah,
They've
yeah.
been doing it and so on for about 2 years. And, when you were doing those clubs in Germany, you were playing sometimes 10 hours
Wow.
a day.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly served your apprenticeship.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's a young guy's game, too. You can't be going at that at my age and
They
try to do
they
10
trained
hours.
in a sweatshop of music, basically.
Yeah.
There you like that in the sweatshop.
It would be
Yeah,
illegal
that's what it
to work a
was.
band like that now.
You had to pay your dues.
Yeah.
And when I went down to London, because I'd paid my dues, I had the wrong accent for London, you see. London's kind of southern and Cockney.
And
I
you've got
was
a very northern accent.
broad Bolton, Manchester accent. So I had to fight for everything because people just thought that, because I came from the north, I was daft.
Right.
Wow.
Well, of course I am, but in the right way.
Right. It's you have a lot of great stories and photographs that can be found online from some of your journeys. But I saw an illustration that's going to be included in the book, and I wanted to ask you about it. It's about a meeting with Jimi Hendrix, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us a little bit about this? Because this is right around that era. How did you come across Jimi Hendrix, and what did you guys talk about?
Well, I obviously haven't sent you any of the cartoons, have I, Eddie?
I saw one where where it's a depiction of you and Hendrix and you're writing ideas down.
Right. Well, basically that's what it was all about. When we was in the club world in London, when I was like 18 and 19, when Jon Anderson and I went down to the south, to the smoke, as we call it.
Right.
We'd go to all these clubs, and one of them was the Speakeasy, and there was phenomenal people there, and they'd get up and jam with each other, Clapton, Elton John. You never knew who was going to be up there next, Pink Floyd.
Right.
And they just, people would just get up from the club, from the dark, corners of the club, and all of a sudden you'd have a jam, and Jimmy used to jam down there. And he heard that I could actually physically write music, on a manuscript.
Right.
So he called me over and he asked me what I wanted to drink. So I told him a vodka tonic. He always drank beer. We sat down and I'm looking at him and thinking, I don't frigging, I nearly said something else. I don't frigging believe this.
Right.
Because Jimmy had already, got himself an amazing reputation. It used to be as Jimmy in the club, and we'd be talking about Jimmy Page.
Right.
But he disappeared fast when Hendrix came along.
Sure.
No offense to Jimmy Page, he's brilliant, but Hendrix was something else.
Of
So
course.
we'd always say before we went in, "Is Jimmy in?" And they'd say, "Oh yeah." So then everybody would pile in, and he called me over. I was really, it was unexpected. And I sat down and talked to him, and he said, "Hey, man, I hear you write music." I said, "Well, I do, but I don't make a habit of it because it's boring." And then he said, "Well, I've got all these ideas, and I can't keep going into studios and putting down a riff and then, paying whatever it is. I want somebody to write it down."
Wow.
Well, I mean, I immediately thought, how the hell do you write?
Right.
How the hell do you write that down?
Yeah.
Cartoonist, Tommy the Drawing Fool, very cool guy. I got him to do cartoons, and I said, what are we going to do? You're going to have to put rainbows and pretty girls and so on. And so that was the way I kind of did a description of what the music would be like if I wrote it down, and it wouldn't be normal music notes. It would be, colors and so on.
You could just draw a little cat face on the staff there.
Pardon?
You could just draw a little kitty cat face on the staff there, where it's supposed to make that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a possibility. But it was kind of a daunting challenge for me.
Right.
And we talked about it at various times when he was there, and he said, "Well, I'm getting ready for it now. I'm getting, when you want." So we were getting to the point where I was definitely going round, and I was just going to sit there and write down whatever I could from what he was playing. And I happened one night to be in the restaurant, and I was talking to the manager of the Marquee Club, a guy called Jack Barry. He also was the manager of Le Chasse Club, which was a little club that all the stars went to after they'd played at the Marquee and didn't want to be bothered.
Right.
It was only 4 doors up in Wardour Street. So he was the manager of that, and he came in that night, so I went and sat down. Now, he was gay, and this presented a problem to Jimmy. I don't think Jimmy was that,
He wasn't ready for
happy
it.
being seen with gay guys or anybody associated with gay guys,
Right.
because it's been said, and I'm not saying this is the truth, so please bear with me on
Sure.
that. But it's been said that Jimmy got out of the army by saying that he was gay because they didn't take gays in those days.
Right.
So he didn't want people to think, that he was gay. So he couldn't be seen with anybody who was even affiliated with someone who was gay. And he saw me in the restaurant, and he looked at me, and he stopped. And he pointed at me, and he said, he said, I'll talk to you with my guitar. I'll never forget it. And I thought, now, what is he saying? Is that an insult? Or,
A threat?
is he saying something nice? And to this day, I still don't know. I think he was pissed off, and he was saying, I don't want to talk to you anymore personally.
Wow.
I'll talk to you like I do with everybody else with the guitar. And a few weeks later, he was dead.
Wow.
So I never know,
That's an incredible story. I mean, just just looking back, I mean, it must be, an amazing thing to have come that close with somebody who is regarded as, somebody who changed music, and a very, very interesting perspective.
Brian, this is Jeremy.
About that time, Eddie, I couldn't put a foot wrong because the next person I meet is Phil Collins.
Right.
And
Wow.
he'd heard that I'd come down from the north with Jon Anderson, and that was it for him. I ended up, moving in to his house with
Right.
his mum and dad, and all they had was a 2-up, 2-down house, 2 bedrooms upstairs and 2 rooms downstairs. Right. And yet he let me share his bedroom, and his mom treated me like a second son, or a third son, because I think she's already got 2.
Right.
But they were just a very loving family, and saying as I wasn't with my parents anymore, and that was again a little daunting for me, they really took me in the wing and looked after me. And Phil and I got on like a house on fire, and we still do. I don't see him or speak to him that often since the last divorce.
Right.
But I'm hoping now he's coming back on the road again, I'll get to see him again, because he's a very, very funny guy.
It reminds me. There's a story that's been across social media recently about Phil about returning to music, and it's one of those things. I guess he took some time off and is coming back. And I was going to ask you, a lot of what they call internet trolls got together, and they're trying to make some petition to have him not come back, which I think is foolish. But I wanted to see what your opinion was on that.
I can't honestly take that kind of shit seriously.
Right, of course.
Ridiculous. Yeah. That a guy with so much talent,
of course,
he has so much talent. Maybe he didn't play, the kind of music that these idiots are talking about.
Right.
Because he joined Genesis and was playing great music. He continued to write and play great music.
Amazing, a fantastic drummer.
Yeah.
I think latter music in Genesis is equally as good as the beginning music. There's some brilliant songs that they wrote, Genesis, and him on his own,
right,
is just one of the greatest shows I've ever seen.
Of course,
simple as that.
I like all the Brand X that he plays on too.
Yeah, I used to go and watch him playing in Brand X, and
let the man do what he wants.
I mean, it wasn't enough for him because he didn't really get a chance to lead the drums and sing.
Yeah.
It was all instrumental. Mm-hmm. And for me, he's equally as good as a singer and a writer as he is a drummer.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, Brian, I was going to ask you. I mean, you've been playing in a lot of groups from that era, and you must have watched a lot of the technology. You know, playing in doing the keys and playing on regular organs and Fenders and this kind of thing. But when the synthesizer came in, how did that change your style? I mean, obviously, prog music became really big. A lot of big solos, guys like yourself and Rick Wakeman, taking to synthesizers, Moogs, and that kind of thing. How do you remember watching that technology kind of coming in and riding that wave?
Well, the first record of any kind of note would be Telstar. And we used to play that in the band I was in when I was about 15.
Right.
Got this little clavioline, I think it was called. It was like a 10-note to 2-octave synthesizer, the very first synthesizer.
Uh-huh.
It was really like a piano accordion keyboard, like the middle bit of a keyboard. And you managed to get a melody out of it. It was, if you listen to Telstar, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But I then went on to live with Keith Emerson.
Wow.
And I lived with 13, 14 years. So
Whoa.
he was the forerunner in synthesizers. I think everybody will say that.
Of
I
course.
also got to know Vangelis through Jon Anderson.
Wow.
Is that right? Wow.
He, for me, is the greatest synthesizer player I've ever heard because he uses synthesizers as they should be. And that is to build walls of sound, not just use it as an extension of the organ.
Oh, yeah.
But, you put a lovely pad down with an amazing sound, and then you put all these, trickly things, and you go deep with sound, really low, and then you'll go really high, so you fill the sound spectrum.
Right.
You fill it, and that's something you can't really do with a normal keyboard. You can't really put a real big bass note down.
Right.
And then really high bells at the top. So that's what Vangelis was doing. He really opened up the cheese boards.
Right. I mean, it's sensational. I mean, and knowing some of the groups and some of the sounds and the players that you've played with. I mean, obviously you did stuff with the Hollies and of course in the '80s with Meatloaf and a host of others. There's a photograph that I gotta ask you about because you may be one of the only guests on our program that can play a guitar and knows your way around it. There is a photograph, and you probably know about this photograph that has a sign that says on the back of the guitar, "I'm only playing one note." I gotta know the story behind this.
Well, that was when with Boys Don't Cry we had I Want to Be a Cowboy, which was considerable hit.
Right.
And we came to America for a 9-week tour, and you've got to have a sense of humor when you're in a band. So I'd play these things that were pre-recorded tape, and you'd trigger it, and it's all going on now,
Right.
Yeah.
It's all going on now. People put voices on and so on because they know they're not going to be able to get the same sound live as they did in the studio. So they take all the sounds from the studio, put it on some form of digital processor, whatever it be, and then they trigger it. Well, I triggered these sounds with one note on the keyboard. So the only person who could see that sign, because it's on the side of the keyboard that's next to my stomach,
Right.
would be, if I pulled it away from me, would be the drummer or anybody that's behind the stage. So every now and again, I'd push it out, and I'd have the drummer pissing his side laughing. Because basically, I used to just play one note many, many times.
Wow.
And I'd be in there looking as though, I was in severe pain and ecstasy.
Right.
And I'd just be pressing this one note.
But that is stagecraft at
Yeah.
its finest. I mean,
It's called showmanship.
It really is.
Come on, Jimmy didn't play guitar with his teeth. Come on. He was playing with his other hand. He was left-handed. So he was playing with his right hand, which anybody can play the guitar with one hand.
Yeah.
You just get the right sound with a lot of feedback, and you can press the notes with your right hand. And he just pretended he was like biting it. And I was totally taken in, as everybody was, that he was playing with his teeth.
Right.
And people were like, he's
can't
as good with his teeth as he is with his fingers. How is that possible?
Well, you know, he was such an exponent about guitar. I mean, he really made it talk in every way.
Indeed.
Setting fire to it and all.
Right.
But Keith Emerson was the same on Cheese Boards, you know.
Exactly.
He did the same. If you remember the band The Night.
Oh, he had that inverted organ thing where, like, it was actually suspended and it would rotate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Oscar Peterson's son saw him do that in a TV show in Canada, and he told his dad. And they showed the video of him going round and round on a grand piano. I mean, that was like a ton weight that they used to be around this machinery that picked him up, and he was safety belted to his piano stool, and it would literally spin round.
Yeah.
Another one of his fantastic kind of skills was when he would jump on the organ and then he'd rock it from side to side, go to the back of the organ,
Right.
lead the organ on his knees, and play it upside down,
Right.
play the key back to front. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Some of
Son of a gun.
that Isle of Wight footage from 1970 where he's jumping over the keyboard. And, I mean, some of the most phenomenal stage work. I mean, talk about a show. Just brilliant.
He was, you know, I couldn't believe. I used to stand in this club, Le Chasse Club, after he just played with the Knights at the Marquee, and I'd go up and I would be in a complete daze. You know, you could talk to me and I wouldn't hear you. I couldn't see you. I was just in another world, and I'd turn around and there would be Keith. He'd just been on the stage, and it was only big enough for about 24 people.
Right.
This club. And he'd be standing right next to me, and I couldn't find my mouth.
Wow.
I couldn't, you know. I just could not find my mouth. I was scared to death of him. And then the next thing I know is I join a band when he breaks up and forms Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Right.
His bass player, Lee Jackson, formed Jackson Heights. And I ended up as his piano player. So Keith used to come and watch me because he was a friend of Lee's. And he'd be the first to stand up and clap after each song.
Wow.
Because it rested entirely on my shoulders, to be honest.
Right.
I used to do all the intros, solos, everything, because the only other instruments in the band was a rhythm guitar played by John McBurney, and Lee, and he didn't even play bass. He played congas.
Wow.
So it was all about the piano. And so it was fantastic for me. I did two years with Jackson Heights, and I had to work my balls, I tell you.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible. You know, a lot of the work that you've done, there's a large list of greats that I want to. I mean, I know we're running out of time, and I would love to get into some of this. We might actually, if it's possible, we'd love to have you back on. We could go through a million of these stories, but I do want to ask, in some of the listings of some of the guys that you've played with, you've been credited to playing with Robin Gibb. And I've got to ask you, did you? What was the experience? When was this? When did you get to perform with Robin?
Gig. I also played with like the Monkees, with one of the guys from the Monkees.
Is that right?
Man. The Bee Gees and the Monkees are huge on this show. We love them.
I don't think I even played anything with Robin. I think I was there. It was a TV show, and I just stood there, you know, like you do.
Wow.
Thinking, pretending to play.
Is that right?
Robin, nice guy, very, very nice guy. But I can't remember actually playing any music with him. I think I just stood there and pretended to.
You know what? That counts.
There's a term for that. Brian, this is Jeremy. It's called sidelining. When you're on TV and you're miming, like, playing in a band, it's called sidelining.
I do that all the time.
So, anytime you see, like, a band play a concert in a movie, it's just some guys who are paid to look like they're rock and roll musicians.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I do quite a lot of whining. I don't complain, but I do whenever I can. You know what I mean?
You got to come back on the show, Brian.
Yeah, I know exactly. Brian, I was gonna say. So we're gonna look. we're going to keep up as far as when the release date of the book comes out.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it's such an honor to have you on and sharing all these great stories. And we really want to get you back and ask you another wave of great stories.
We're all very, very happy that you gave up your career in football.
Thank you. What I usually say about now is, yeah, well, that was okay, but then when I was sick.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We've got to do it. Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll obviously we'll stay in touch and keep tabs, and of course when this show goes out, we'll let you know when that goes out. But just absolutely incredible stories, and we look forward to having you back. I want to say from all of us, we want to thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks to Mark Vacure. I think that's how you say it.
Oh yeah, Mark Vacure, great friend of the program. Yes.
Thanks very much, Mark, if you're listening. Dude, great drummer as well.
Oh, fantastic. We actually have to get some stories from Mark. He's got some great ones, too.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I bet he does. We had that flashback thing for a while.
Right, yeah, I would love to hear that story. Some a tour that may or may not have happened. I'm not sure, but depending on who you spoke to. But we love
it's my pleasure as well, Eddie, and I'll let you know when we're closer to the actual release date, and we'll do another.
You got it. Well, thank you so much, Brian. As always, we appreciate it, and we wish you the best for this holiday season, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take it easy, man.
You got it.
And you.
You got it. Bye-bye, baby.
See you, Brian.
There it is. The wonderful Brian Chatton.